Hey, welcome back to another episode.
Hello, welcome back.
This is In Bed with the Russians, but we're not in bed. We're sitting up because we want to be a little bit more clear-headed.
And definitely awake.
Yeah, on the cusp of passing out is not always the best way to record a podcast. And especially now because, you know, we're going to be talking about something, I don't know, that a lot of people are talking about, or someone that a lot of people are talking about right now. And that someone is Lex Fridman.
Our compatriot.
The podcast of the hour. Podcaster of the hour.
I would say podcaster of the year. He really had, or at least last year, I don't know, he kind of has a moment.
It's true.
Definitely.
The podcaster of our, the current moment, especially with Trump and Elon Musk coming to power, he's sort of he's kind of emerged as a kind of a serious court
podcaster.
Court podcaster. I mean, he's had like Musk on, I don't know how many different times. Yeah. They're like buddies, you know.
And I now feel like we probably talked about it before. I'm not sure the whole concept of being a court Russian. And I think Lex now is sort of winning being the court Russian of the day, of, I don't know, the moment. Yeah. While back in the day, I feel like Masha Gessen was definitely a big winner. But now there's sort of like there was a big shift. And sort of, in some ways, she's more irrelevant. And also, I don't know, it's not her moment anymore.
It's a really good way of putting it. I never thought about it this way. Yeah, like the libs have their own court Russians, and then sort of the righties have their own court Russians.
But it's also like there's also sometimes the moment. It doesn't matter. There was more of a lib moment back in the day. But now I think the sort of polemics or whatever it is.
The lib moment is fading. It's over. Yeah.
So even if they have their own court Russian, it's sort of more. It's the spotlight is not on
irrelevant.
her.
She's
no,
more
it's
relevant.
about the spotlight. Yeah. So I feel like our compatriot Lex. What is he? Sasha? Is he
Sashka.
Alex?
Yeah.
I imagine he should go by Sasha Fridman, because when I first saw his name, I have to kind of explain this. First of all, it like looks like is it like a porn name? I don't know. There's some kind of weird thing. And then it also kind of hides this Lex thing, the first name, fully hides, unlike Yasha, for instance. He's kind of foreignness that is there. And the first time I watched it, it was like maybe a few years ago. I knew nothing. It wasn't about I think I wasn't even like on Twitter. I can't remember. And I was watching it and I got paranoid because it was really weird that I was starting to pick up on this accent kind of he has. But because of the name, and I don't know, it was like really bizarre. For a second I thought, is he hiding that he's something else? I remember thinking, wait, is he hiding that he's Russian and he's like presenting himself as this? And then I looked him up, obviously, and turned out, no, he's not hiding this. That's the name he goes by, and he has like a mild accent.
But I feel like it's the name is a function of him essentially trying to fit in or something, you know, because
it's fine. A lot of immigrants change their names.
I'm not saying it. I'm not saying they don't, but I'm just saying it's a function of that. I think it is because, for me, basically, Yasha reclaimed. Jacob was going to be my American name, and I sort of like ditched it and reclaimed my sort of childhood name of Yasha as a way of reclaiming my identity. For him, he sort of stayed with this very ambiguous kind of. Okay, you're an immigrant, obviously, because you have an accent and all these things, but you're like really, not trying to like broadcast it to the world before you even open your mouth, right?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. And
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Now thinking about it, maybe if you want Yasha, we would never be together. Imagine it'd be like,
hey,
Привет, я Jacob. I'm Jacob.
It'd be weird if I was in Moscow and it was going by my American name.
Also if that's all you knew, because that would be your name.
Yeah.
And people would be like, Jacob, пойдем выпьем.
Jacob, exactly. Or like I have my, Drake.
But he's a real American.
He's a real American, but it's a funny name, Drake, in Russian. Anyway, there is, so I do think that the reason why I want to just back up a little bit for people who might not, be tied into the news cycle, and the reason that, Lex, Sasha, is kind of huge right now is that he interviewed the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky. And they talked for like 3 hours, and so it was like a big get for him, and so he was really pumping it up, and as this kind of very like down, dirty, honest interview where everything is discussed, nothing is off the table, honesty and all this stuff, and so it's kind of, I think it's he's interviewed some big names, Lex. So he's got Trump under his belt. He's got Elon Musk, who's his buddy. He's got Huberman. They're buddies. They're trading dating advice and all this stuff.
They actually, I think Lex took him to his jiu-jitsu school.
Yes,
it's an amazing. I'll share that YouTube video.
This is crazy.
And he kind of gives him short master class to Huberman.
Yes.
Of jiu-jitsu kind of game, and it's really kind of bizarre to watch, but we'll get
it taps into a central theme, I think, that helps explain Lex Fridman. And I think for a lot of people who aren't tied into the podcast or watching the podcast world, suddenly the fact that Lex Fridman is like all over the headlines, in newspapers in America and in Europe and Ukraine and Russia, as like the guy, podcaster who got this interview with Zelensky. And people are, I think, a little bit weirded out, like, who is this? Because when you watch Lex Fridman, he's not a very he doesn't give off vibes of of someone who's particularly that interesting. He doesn't ask very interesting questions, really. He's like kind of superficial and has very almost like an anti charisma.
Well, it's an android kind of thing.
He's got the totally like a kind
poker
of
face, right?
But it's like autistic computer anti-charisma energy. Like even his style is very strange. It's like his facial expressions are
Wait, but I don't know. Do you want to get into this?
People don't know how he got to where he was.
Right. And there's actually big sort of people who just found out about him, and it's clearly figured out that he's huge.
Yeah.
They call him, how come he's such a successful grifter? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What's the secret? But actually, just to respond to you, that you say he's a bit like robotic and all that, but to some extent, actually, interview-wise, because you're definitely not a very good interviewer. I'm not that great either. And I think sometimes the secret of a good interview is being the kind of like a sort of white wall.
Yeah.
That is sort of like just the other people can bounce off
just
or something.
Just a hole that asks questions. Yes.
No, but also in a certain way, doesn't interrupt and all this stuff. And, outside of our...
Doesn't have complex thoughts, yeah.
Well, yeah, so that actually can be truly good. But people are still surprised because this sort of like lack of, as you say, of obvious charisma is a bit surprising for this sort of... for his, stature, I guess.
I mean,
right?
even like some guy like Charlie Rose, who is, he had like some kind of sleazy charisma, right?
For sure.
Right?
And in fact, he would be not the. Does this metaphor even make sense? Like the white wall. He is the one who would interrupt people, will get in there, even if he clearly didn't read the thing or is very sort of like ignorant.
Yeah.
He wouldn't even care to show this. But there was something about the dynamic actually.
Yeah, it's like a lively conversation.
And he would like actually hold the space in some ways.
Yeah.
And it could be super annoying, but it was a thing. And here it's not even that. It's really not that.
I mean, look, you have podcasters have different styles. I mean, not everyone is anti-charisma as he is. I mean,
he's actually the extreme case of that,
yes.
And the extreme success of that. So it actually is interesting.
Yeah.
It's not like nothing.
Yeah, and and I think we have a kind of a view on why he's successful, and we have an insight into his personality. I think because he is a lot like us. I mean. He is, first of all, he's a lot like me. He's an immigrant from the Soviet Union. I think he was born in Tajikistan, actually.
Yeah,
and then
Chkalov,
because his parents were doing something there, and then but his parents are actually from Ukrainians, but like Russian Ukrainians, basically Russian culture and all this stuff. And so then he moved around. I think he lived in Kiev. Then he lived in Moscow a little bit, and then when he was 11, he came to America with his parents. And his dad is like a big math guy. And he's got I think he probably immediately got a job at Drexel University. But he is a Soviet immigrant. He came a few years. When he came over here, he was a little bit older than I was. But generally, I understand him a lot better than your average American. And I think Evgenia has her own kind of insight into it because he comes from a very particular kind of family, a very
well, I would say I don't know much because, again, anyone who actually follows Lex Fridman knows that there was a pretty sort of compelling, interesting interview with his dad on his YouTube channel that he since then deleted out of completely. So he tries to hide, I think, that. But based on that interview, because I don't really know much, I could tell that, yes, he comes from this sort of pretty traditional, so if you have an idea, as I do, of the Soviet society, what is this kind of family is kind of uber, how to call it, flamboyant dad mathematician who is super full of himself and kind of, I don't know, a bit of a god complex that's very actually common. It's very common. It's not like the sort of modest Soviet person. That's the the extreme opposite of that.
Yeah. And
I wouldn't say it's not necessarily a pattern that everyone's like that, but there is a sort of I don't know how to say it. Speaking almost as a native anthropologist, there is a sort of a mythology in Soviet Union of this physics / higher mathematics guys being kind of Renaissance men of Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And I don't know if actually anyone conceptualized that, maybe in the kitchen talks, but not in writing. And it kind of was true to some extent because they were usually employed as a scientist or some sort of I don't know. Yeah, basically they worked in different math. How you introduce
labs, or
what is NII? It's very specific.
NII, it's
Naучный институт.
It's look, these academic institutes, research institutes that are run by the state, that were very tied into the running of the country, because they weren't just doing some theoretical research or whatever. They're tied into the party system.
Yes.
They were very in demand, and
and they were, even if everyone was poor and poorly paid, they were very respected.
Not only that, but they had actually, I think, in terms of just the hierarchy of the worker hierarchy in the Soviet Union, they probably had some of the most. They had some of the biggest privileges in terms of the kind of work that they did. Their work-life balance, the kind of
100%.
access to the kind of facilities for vacations, for recreation, the ability to basically have a lot of downtime because they could pursue hobbies, interests.
Yeah, it seems that way. Again, I don't know.
And because they were so respected by society, they became very full of themselves.
Yes.
And frequently, because they're mathematicians, they have good memories, or physicists, they have very sharp memories, computer kind of razor sharp minds.
Yeah.
And so because that allowed them to, they can read a book and remember everything, so they
impress people.
They impress people and they impress themselves, basically.
I think they impress other people they impress themselves by impressing other people.
So they really it's a type you encounter it. It's this. Basically, it's a man. It's always a man.
It's always a man.
And he is 50% chance that he's Jewish.
High percentage, not necessarily.
No, but there's 50% chance that he's Jewish. And they're a physicist or engineer. They are so sure of themselves. There is no doubt about their thoughts, right? There just is no doubt. They know everything. You can't teach them anything. It's interesting. So his dad, that's the vibe that you got from his dad.
Yeah, but you didn't let me finish. What I wanted to say is that type of man is the kind of Renaissance, a version of Renaissance man. That's what I think other people here can understand Renaissance man, the concept of Soviet Union, meaning that usually by profession, by their day job, which they usually could even it's not a shitty day job, there would be men of science. But by their wide interests and how they spending their time and what they do, they're also men of letters, meaning they kind of more or less could be widely read. They play guitar.
They play
guitar. They kind of go sort of camping where they play guitar and read poetry that they can remember very well. Now it makes sense to me. They actually, because of their naturally good memory and the way also of Soviet education, how it worked, a lot of people had to memorize things. I even grew up like that in the 90s, which is good. But in order to memorize things, you need to have actually pretty good memory. So it kind of it makes sense they were this math guys to begin with. And so they were kind of like impressive, I think. They were kind of like, that is the popular guy for in a class. Like, this is the guy who can get all the girls. I mean, unless he's like a super dweeb, then it's a different thing. But I don't describe the dweeb. These are not like dweebs.
High status individual.
High status individual, yes.
I mean, I wonder if it's like what would be the similar thing in America. I mean, like someone who works in finance or something, or like.
But it's not the same.
But more intellectual. Finance guy, because of like the status that you have, it's very high. It's like a society.
Yeah, but not really. No, it's not like that. It's very informal because they're really high status if you get to, like, how you can compare to the capitalist society. If you want to compare, the real high status is nomenclatura. No, it's very different, meaning like you're actually tied with the party. You're just have huge apartments and sometimes maybe even a maid. Like, that's very different.
But those people can be part of the nomenclatura if they're like in charge of an institute.
They could be, but what I'm describing as a type has nothing to do with your what do you call it, like because it's not about money. There was no money. It's more social status rather than your daily kind of habits that could be very similar to very simple Soviet people. I don't think it's like this. It's actually almost like it's not social status. It's like informal capital kind of. I don't know how to.
Yeah, I got you. But it's also like that informal capital is actually very valuable in Soviet Union because there is no other capital.
Because people don't have money anyway.
Yeah, so like actually that capital actually you obviously can't draw a 1-to-1 to a capitalist system, but that capital is extremely valuable for your social standing, for like how for it's
maybe for how popular you are, stuff like that.
Yeah,
maybe I'm not sure because again, like I don't want to actually because it sounds almost ideal. Oh, you can be this guy and you can and that's enough. No, because there was also all kind of not even corrupt schemes. Like there were levels of power, and there were privileges that has nothing to do with how good you are at math or how charismatic you are, and they did exist, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I got you.
There was
just bring it back to sort of Lex is that what's clear is that a lot of times these kinds of men. These kinds of individuals that are very domineering.
Oh, extremely.
Because they have a super strong personality and they're like, in a way, can squash everyone around them. And your dad was a little bit like that, right?
Oh, yeah, okay. Bring it back. Why am I even talk with such, because I kind of talk with aplomb, right? Like I know what's up.
Yeah.
Well, my dad was 100% that. But like the worst case scenario where I think his God complex sort of killed him in some ways. Because I think sometimes it can propel you to real life, even achievements, and maybe that are useful to people. Those guys can like invent something or discover something. Well, I don't know. But in my dad, in case of my dad, he went to the most prestigious math university, which he like seemed to, without much interest in it, like he could like finish it and easily like study there, and then he worked at the very famous NII with Kaldish. Anyway, I don't think people would know any famous, very famous NII from mathematicians, and I think it was fairly easy for him too, but he wasn't very interested. Anyway, he dropped out of that, and sort of because of actually the real guy like that shouldn't drop out of his like day job, even if he likes poetry or whatever. But my dad actually dropped out of that pretty prestigious and can be, I guess, rewarding kind of life. So anyway, he's not a good example
more
of
like
that.
Artistic pursuits.
Full on, 100%.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm saying is, the individual, and it's like it because your dad was like that, and the personality. So as it applies to Lex Fridman, the
domineering dad, basically.
So he has a super domineering dad. And an extremely accomplished father, so there's like the dual thing. Because I think, look, I don't know how long we want to beat around the bush, because I think, there's like a central thesis to why, Elon Musk, Lex Fridman is so successful. The way that he got successful, and I think the way that he built up his podcast, right, is basically he's like sucking up to great men, to domineering men, to men of history, and so he would, as I understand it, like he came up the way he would get these guests on, essentially tricking them by pretending to be an MIT professor.
But truly out, like, lying?
Well, he'd like, well, not lying. He wouldn't say it outright, but he'd like write from like an MIT address. He'd say, I'm affiliated, I'm teaching at MIT.
But was he ever not?
Well, no, he like for a time was like at some lab associated with MIT. It was like he was like not a professor. He was never a professor at MIT, but he gave the impression I mean, some of the people who like criticized him, like who he tried to book, you know, and laugh at him, like pointed this out, is like the way that he got people on his show is that he essentially misrepresented his institutional affiliations with MIT, and so he'd get like, you know, top authors, top scientists, right, to get on the show. And so his whole approach to sort of success, to climbing to the podcast ladder, is to, you know, get like the most authoritative, the biggest name kind of guests on topics, and basically suck up to them, and like, you know, basically try to milk them for their manly wisdom, because it was always men. Like, I think you might have had later women. I think you might have been criticized for not having women on his podcast at all. And you know, and then slowly, and I think what happened is when he was able to get, there was this thing, he, at MIT, he ran some little research project that studied the safety of autonomous vehicles, basically self-driving cars. And he did some research study that basically said Tesla is like the safest. It's safer than humans driving. And, you know, and I think that got the attention of Elon Musk, and maybe Elon Musk came on the show because of that. Right? So it's like there's a direct connection. So he's kind of doing this like kind of suck-up dance to people with authority, to people with, you know, to men with authority, to men who...
But that research, was it real? Did he really conducted it?
He conducted it, but it's like, but he conducted it, you know, I mean, how accurate is it? It's like, you know, I don't think it was peer-reviewed. It's not like, it wasn't like, he just, yes, so...
But anyway, but that made Alan notice him, and I think according to Wikipedia, that's when his podcast truly blew up.
Yes, but he had been kind of grinding along, and I think even initially he started his podcast as like the artificial intelligence podcast or something. So he was interested in artificial intelligence. He was interested in like computer science. He's basically this kind of accelerationist type of like guy who believes in the power of beauty of technology. It makes sense. He's from a scientific family. His dad is.
It's almost would be like you know how I like talking about that. It's hard to be doing something as first generation.
Yes.
In some ways, he's not doing this as first generation.
No, he's building. He's building on kind of, and so he was comfortable being kind of an MIT professor because basically his dad is as a professor.
Drexel, I don't know what is this university.
But his father could be at MIT. It's not a huge thing. So, and that's his whole thing. And he you know,
he and Anna Hachian should get married.
Should get married because they have the same fathers.
They have the same dad,
and they have the same politics, and they have the same podcast essentially.
And she feels like a woman who'd be a good wife to a gay husband.
Yeah. Yes, because because I want to stop you there because I think
why not?
I don't want to beat around the bush anymore. I think having kind of watched him for a number of years, I first sort of came across him I think during COVID. I tweeted about him and he promptly blocked me, so I've been blocked for like.
What did you tweet?
Okay, because he did this because I was watching him tweet, you know, and he was doing this usual. I was on my weaponized immigrant kind of on my weaponized immigrant kind of wave back then when I was calling out all the basically Soviet immigrants to America who do nothing but praise America, have like nothing negative to say about this country, and only kind of shit on, you know, the country that they come back from, you know. So basically playing up to the stereotypes of the brutal Russians or, you know, horrible Russians, and basically just licking like, you know, sucking up to Americans. And he was, and I saw him do that, and I tweeted something like, saying something like, "Oh, I wish I was as brain dead as my fellow weaponized Soviet immigrants. I'd probably be much more happy at life because it would like help me, you know, basically deal with this shitty country." And he blocked me from just that one tweet.
Did you subtweet him, or did you imply that?
I quote tweeted him.
Oh, so you meant him. Well, but that's offensive. What do you want?
Yeah, but he blocked me. I mean, so
you called him brain dead.
So this is a guy. Let me this. So what? I noticed that from right away that anyone who criticizes him, he blocks. It's like a thing. He blocks anyone who criticizes him, and so this is an interesting thing for a podcast host who's all about. You know, basically, he's got a kind of a weird God complex himself. He thinks that by going on his podcast or through podcasting or through conversations, you can basically solve all the world's problems.
But it's very much like what I'm interested in, phenomena of documentary, because they usually talk about it always in terms of raising awareness and starting conversations.
Yes.
They start conversations and they raise awareness. And Lex is not unlike them, because there's even like a funny clip people I think cut out of some episode of his and shared, where he talks about this like starting conversations, all about conversation, conversation, that. I'm like, okay, dude, you had all these conversations. The only thing that it really changed is your fortune.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
I mean, to be like kind of more. Well, okay, maybe people also learned a thing or two about AI or whatever.
Yeah, and also like, you know, if you're so much into conversation, blocking someone who kind of disagrees with you.
Who starts a conversation with you.
I started a conversation. I said, you're like I started a conversation about weaponized immigrants. You could be like, hey, what's that? I could tell you. Sorry, you have this thing.
I'm
offensive.
Tell me, I can cut it out. But you have this thing. You have a real, like, let's say, comment or criticism, whatever. Totally valid. Can be novel, whatever. But you tend to always put it in this words or add a word or add some kind of like descriptive thing that on some level I can understand how it does it, not just with Lex but with anyone. It kills the argument because no one wants to listen to you, and it's actually not efficient. It's just not efficient.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't looking to start a conversation.
But you know what I'm saying? Let's say you want to criticize someone. If there's truly some criticism that's valid and maybe interesting, you don't call them brain dead.
Yeah, I know. Look, I will admit I was offensive. It was meant to be offensive.
Yeah.
And yet, I will say this: if you are a believer in the power of conversations to change the world, you don't immediately shut people out just because like, who cares? Like, let them fucking rant. For instance, I'm someone who doesn't believe in the power of conversations to change the world. I mean, they can have power, obviously, but I don't. I only block in extreme cases, like extreme cases, you know, because because I'm okay with taking, you know, criticism from people. I'm okay with taking insults from people. You understand? I'm comfortable enough to do that, and I think he's not, and he's kind of closed off. So there's to me, it's like, who cares? Like, he blocked me for some fucking tweet that I made that wasn't designed to be offensive. But I do think that it's like a thing that people immediately said, oh yeah, he blocked me too. Oh yeah, he blocked me too. Oh yeah, he blocked me too. It's like if you say something negative, you get blocked.
Okay, so in short, it seems like his sort of like supposedly devotion to starting a conversation is a bit fake.
He's closed. He's actually an extremely closed and super tightly controlled individual.
Yeah, okay, back to that. So, okay, because I think the only kind of expertise we're claiming to offer here is partially because we're like compatriots, fellow immigrants, also from similar backgrounds to some extent, even me more so than you.
Yes.
So we kind of like, I claim to sort of get him more than average American, especially average sort of establishment, you know, like the kind of American.
Yeah, totally. I mean, they don't understand him at all.
I don't think they get it because he's foreign. He's foreign, and he's an immigrant. I think it's very essential, no matter what you build on top of that. And so, okay, back to this. So there is this very fascinating sort of, what do you call it, episode on the Lex YouTube channel that's called A Life in the Day of Lex Fridman. And it goes back to this rigidity. And it seems like maybe his fans, or I don't know, because his fans are weird. On the one hand, they criticize him that he's like robotic and has no charisma, but on the other hand, I guess they suck up to him too.
Yeah.
And so clearly people wanted this because how efficient he is and productive. And so he did record it, and it's the weirdest thing you can ever watch. I highly recommend. I'll probably share it in the kind of in the description. And so there he actually sort of shows what his day is like, and it seems like he starts his day, if it's all true, if you believe it, with very kind of like rigid, and the whole day is actually rigidly scheduled, extremely rigidly, to like by 10 minutes segments of work/rest/ whatever, workout, food. And I guess for a guy who's into AI and kind of biohacking and a friend of Huberman, it's not that weird, but his case is particularly rigid. He like starts his day and he talks to the camera, and he seems like he has no kind of joy of life in him, like nothing. He's a super successlial guy, like single,
lives in Austin, like hangs out with billionaires.
Yeah, has this guitars, has some free time, has respect, and
living the dream.
Living the dream. He kind of wanted like American dream, immigrant American dream.
Like,
and the most important thing for me, I don't even care what his schedule is like, but that he seems so unhappy and sad.
Yes.
And it just kind of unbelievable that he shows his face, like he shows his like early morning routine, how he wakes up and like thinks about mantras and affirmations and what's important in life, something like long-term goals, short-term goals. It's really bizarre, a combination of like different goals, and I think he believes in moral codes, and it's really a lot. And I guess if I'm like a bit more, I don't even know, naively look at it and I'm like, whoa, this is almost like a holy person / monk who is really set on living his life to the fullest of his potential, but in terms of like doing kind of good, right?
Also, he like knows exactly what he wants and what brings him happiness.
But it's also not hedonistic. It's actually interesting. So you kind of think, oh, okay, he's really devoting his whole life to a big goal, and it's like not clear eventually what's that deep work. He calls it deep work.
I know what the goal is.
Okay.
we'll get to the goal. We'll get to the goal. Because the goal is the goal. Goal is a big one.
And but I'm getting it. And so even the morning segment with all these affirmations and all that stuff, and such an unhappy, sad face, and you listen to him talk about all his goals and affirmations and moral codes, and you're like,
and about controlling every aspect of his life, like tightly, super tight.
Yeah. Which is good to not let yourself go, obviously, but once you really tune into him, you're like, oh my god, because I was watching it the first time a few months ago, and I'm like, okay, all that stuff he's saying, sure, maybe I even believe him, but like underneath this all, you know how, remember that meme of pyramid of needs by Maslow?
Yeah.
And the big meme is that underneath all that pyramids of needs, underneath food and shelter and safety, there's Wi-Fi.
Yes.
There's like people draw, and I thought, okay, for him, it's almost like what he's saying, his like
the
goals.
Needs is the needs.
So, and if you draw that like crooked little line underneath, I would write something like this: no dick.
Meaning,
don't be gay, don't act gay, don't be gay, don't live like a gay man. Don't do
you're
this.
You're not gay.
You're not gay. You're not gay.
I'm not gay. You're not. I'm not gay. Yes.
I'm like not gay.
Not even have that thought. Right, that you might be gay.
Kind of.
Yes.
So just sort of like.
I mean, our point being is this: we believe, and truly believe, from all the evidence.
It's not a joke.
No, from all the evidence that we've been able to gather, that Lex Fridman is gay.
Closeted gay.
And closeted gay, and because it's actually very common, in I've actually talked about it quite a lot here on the podcast.
Say more.
And I've written about it. In fact, this topic is actually going into my novel as well. Is the extreme repressive kind of not gay repressive, but the extreme repression of gayness that exists in Soviet immigrant culture.
And in Soviet culture.
But also in Soviet culture and in Russian culture today.
And in Russian
basically, there are no gay people in the Soviet Union.
Back in the Soviet Union, first of all, homosexuality was outlawed for some time.
Yeah. But even that, but just culturally, like, I mean, look, I grew up in fucking San Francisco, okay? So I grew up in San Francisco, there's a gay pride fucking every year. We were sort of aware of it. There are all these like sex shops and stuff. I mean, when I was like, I don't know, probably like 14 or something, or 13. I don't remember exactly. I was like on some like gifted student kind of summer program for like a month, and so I was like away from my Soviet immigrant peers that I grew up with, and so I was with these Americans, and so we.
How did you prove you're gifted?
Well, I don't know. My mom got me into it. Just
okay. Not that I doubt it, but
I mean, I don't know. It was I don't know how they probably measured my skull or something.
Because I've never been on any gifted.
It's not really gifted. We read some Shakespeare, although I have to say the Shakespeare was above my head. I couldn't understand Shakespeare when I was 14, and so I was not. I think maybe I got in there through some kind of corruption. I don't know. But I was hanging out with these Americans, and it was for the first time, looking back on it, that I like. we went to like the Castro, because like I was just hanging out, and after school we went to hang out, and the Castro was pretty close to that school, and so I went into like a sex shop, and there was like dildos and all this stuff and condoms and things like that, and I never, like, I don't know, like it was so I saw that quite early, and just generally it was in San Francisco, but I know hundreds of people that I grew up with that are Soviet immigrants in San Francisco.
Hundreds?
I mean, I know hundreds of. I mean, not closely, but I've hung out with like hundreds. I mean,
no one is openly gay. Correct?
Nobody's openly gay.
That's like statistically. Everyone talks statistically. It's impossible. There should be at least like a few.
It's like, and I like know a couple of people that are like clearly gay. I mean, it's cool. Like, be yourself. Like, I mean, like, I know a guy who used to go to gay like clubs
to pick up girls,
to pick up women,
but
and then I was like,
told me that.
No, and I was like, I remember thinking, damn, this guy's fucking smart, because he would do it. He would do it. He'd like pick up chicks at a gay
would they
club.
Leave with them?
He would leave with chicks at a gay bar, and I was like, damn, this is pretty fucking. But then a few years later, I was like, wait a second. You're just gay, and you're like, what? There's some weird shit going on.
Wait,
and
but he would leave with the women.
Yeah, but okay,
I feel like forces
but that's
himself.
The whole, Well, it's not. It's because you can be gay and sort of not even be aware of it yourself. And I think that there's a huge amount of this happening in my immigrant community. That there are a lot of gay men who would normally be gay, if they had been born if they were the same age, but they had been born in America, let's say, and they grew up in San Francisco or in any kind of big town. They would have been just gay, and they would have been fine with it, But they are to the point where they aren't even aware that they're gay. I think, it's like maybe there are thoughts that they have sometimes. I mean, I don't know. I don't think a man wouldn't be even like straight guys or whatever. It would, like, there's sometimes you might question your own straightness. I mean, what is it? How do you even know? Yeah. But the point is, no one's even like aware that they might be gay. So it's like it's on that level. I think
so. It's definitely more repressed than average.
Super repressed, like it's crazy repressed. It's not. I don't think they're even like doing on the down low.
We don't know that, but
I'm just because I'm like, maybe I'm just naive, but maybe they're just on the down low. They're just fucking all of them, and they're just hiding it from me, maybe. But so like when I see Lex Fridman, like immediately, we were watching this together, and I'm like the flashing light.
Well, it wasn't
in my head.
Immediate for me, but yeah, once we started watching, maybe
light,
like
the
for half
flashing
an hour.
light was like ding ding ding. It's like wow, and then everything clicked.
Everything makes sense. Let me continue. So maybe we should have started that way, but I wanted to kind of like build up to this.
Yeah.
So what I think, I hope it doesn't sound negative. That
No.
I actually really feel for Lex. I hope it's not offensive or anything.
Yeah.
I'm not homophobic. I think everyone should embrace their kind of whatever sexual sort of proclivities, unless they're pedophile, then they should repress them. But so no, but that's actually a thing.
Yes.
So the kind of like his thing clearly is pretty healthy. So he likes men, kind of like powerful men. It's fairly healthy, not illegal, nothing wrong with him, all good. But the thing is, because he's so repressed, I think that's what made him successful.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, I think isn't it the very banal, even Freudian analysis of everything?
Yeah.
Sublimation.
Exactly.
So he sublimated his repressed desire and attraction into the podcast, into hanging out with them, being like a really, as far as he can, even if he is more of an android, like emotionless guy, into being the kind of gracious interviewer, host, and kind of letting him talk at him almost, like not really almost with him, at him.
Yes.
And really enjoying it, because it's important. I think these guys see that he likes this. He doesn't like just wait to get his word in and argue the point how you would do it probably.
Yeah.
Or like he doesn't do it. So in some ways, this desire and admiration really brought him the success.
And I do agree with you. I was actually watching the Zelensky interview, and I watched about half of it, and then fast forwarded through the rest of it. And I do have to I mean I can be critical of some of Lex's sort of just kind of dumb, kind of right wing, but just standard kind of right wing politics or something. But I think he does actually a not bad job as an interviewer, because like you were saying earlier, the kind of the having no personality is an asset. It could be an asset, but also you could tell all he really wants to do is just to hang, and just hang out, And
there's no agenda, nothing, no point to prove,
Well, I mean,
or catch him.
He's got he's got an ego, and he's clearly wants he's planned out the stuff, but I think on a deeper level, forget like his desire to be the top podcaster of the world, or maybe he wants to be, I don't know, a senator or something in the future. Who knows what he wants? Maybe he wants to be the next president of Ukraine. He was born there. He was, I think.
No, Tajikistan.
But his parents are Ukrainian.
Oh, okay.
So who knows what his actual ambitions are. But I do think that because, he has this, he just loves hanging out with powerful, smart, brilliant, accomplished, strong men. And
nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it. And it just comes through. And I do think that's why he can actually do a good podcast because of that. And so,
in fact, if he was openly gay, maybe it would preclude him because it would be like getting in the way. Who knows? Like this desire stuff. I don't know how it works.
No, totally. I think you're right. I think you're right.
It would be a problem.
And I think it is an incredible case, of like sublimation, of where you have this kind of the repressed
Attraction.
aspect of your personality, like, and it still comes out in some kind of way.
It's there.
And so however, he's lucky in that way, I guess, because however it came out, it came out in a way that's, I don't know, made him extremely successful, and yet there is a sadness to it.
Yeah,
right?
there is.
When he's like takes off the sort of the makeup a little bit.
Well, day in the life.
Yeah,
for
when
instance.
he's a bit more honest, I guess, and he's like just brings you into his home. He comes out of the studio.
He just looks depressed.
And when he has to talk about himself, it looks. Well, actually, even a picture is enough to convey it. It's like.
Or 30 seconds.
I mean, it's like there's this just the facial, like the language of his face. It's just it's droopy. It's sad, depressed. I mean, he's not a happy person.
Doesn't seem that way. He like runs every day for an hour really fast, works out, eats really well, takes supplements, and it feels like it keeps him going physically, but I don't think there's like much joy.
I
don't know, but I don't want to read into it.
No, I'm reading into it because there's also another, because him and Huberman are buddies, right? And Huberman
seems full of joie de vivre.
Yeah,
for
Huberman
sure.
is like, he's who he is. He's a bro who likes to live and likes women and
fine.
Lies
to all of them.
And lies to all of them. And
okay, by the way, I don't know if I've ever talked. That takedown of him, I guess I read at least 70% of it. There's nothing in it. Okay, he lies to all the women he sleeps with. Whoa. What do you expect?
Or he like lied to them about, I mean, it's not he lies about everything. He just lied about, the fact that he's sleeping with. Yeah.
Well, but what do you, like, that's like when I was reading it, I'm like, are you like, how dumb can you be? What's this American culture that expects what from people?
I know.
Giving them everything, giving them power and money, and expects what? Monk behavior? Well, sometimes it happens, but it's not a rule.
Some men who have no money and power do the same thing. It's not even about that. It's just, people lie to the people who they say they love.
But it's not a crime.
It's not a crime. It's just, the point is, there's this because Lex Fridman, takes, I guess, requests from his fans, right?
Yeah.
And I guess when it's like a slow news, whatever, week or something, and and one of them is like, he was answering a question about why is Lex Fridman single?
Is it he recorded it himself?
No, he is talking about in conversation with Huberman.
Ah, okay.
And
what is that?
It is a very strange answer because right away he doesn't really answer. Huberman answers for him.
What do you say?
Well, Huberman goes on this rant because he doesn't know why he's single.
Who knows?
He's like, well, because you're just waiting to find the right individual, and you're so you fall in love with things and people so much that you're
Sure.
and it's like and then Lex is like, yeah, and then he gives us this weirdest non-answer. It's like he just kind of rambles about like needing, like, what is a relationship? It's like we're all like trying to optimize ourselves, and when two people are together, it's like you really don't know yourself, and it's like two people are together, they don't really know each other.
Okay, so let me kind of almost rudely interrupt you. Just I forgot. Checked it right now. So he's 41 years old. Sometimes wisdom of the old world, or just old wisdom works, old wisdom.
Yes.
So old wisdom goes like this. He's 41.
Yeah.
Unless you're a womanizer, which is like a whole thing, it's like a way of life. You usually don't hide it or can't hide it that well, especially if you're famous. And unless you're like not married, but like with some woman or have some kind of love in your life, you're gay. That's an old wisdom. That's it. That's it to it. There's nothing else. So, I mean, it's not like it's not fucking, what is it? What do you call it? Quantum. It's not quantum
physics. You're either already
physics.
like married a couple times and divorced, or just married.
Maybe never. No,
Maybe
you might
married.
be never. You're a womanizer. You're not married.
Or you're a womanizer, or you're gay.
Or you're gay. And it's not like, oh, you're gay, bad. No, it just means something.
Yes.
It means you're gay.
He's not open about it. And it's fine. I mean, he's repressed. This is our claim. I mean, I don't know if we can be sued for saying this.
Oh, can we?
I don't know.
You know what? Sue us.
Yeah, sue us. I mean, I actually will stand by it because it's not a slur.
Why is it a slur?
I mean, if you sue us and you think it's a slur, that's fine. I mean, that's whatever. It's not a slur. We're just saying... it's obvious for why he is and what he is. It explains a lot, you know. It explains his love of authority, and it's kind of like of male authority and his like fetishization of it, because he does have a fetishization of great men of history. I mean, it's like if you watch any of his podcasts, you know, it's a lot of it. He's very much about, you know, the books, you know, written
true.
by like the important men who were the
kind of like the canon in a way,
canon,
right?
you know, and he'll have, you know, for instance, he had like Stephen Kotkin on, and he's like always, he is actually a Stephen Kotkin fan.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
and so he's like, in a way, he...
Mershmeyer was there.
Yeah,
no, Mearsheimer.
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 He's got all the big men on there, and I mean, and then he also has this thing about like Putin being kind of a strong leader, and it's like someone who like he said this to Zelensky, he loves his country, like Putin loves his country.
What did Zelensky say? Because
Zelensky laughed at him.
Okay.
But like because he's like, what, you don't think Putin loves his country? That's what Lex, you know, like kind of like was surprised that Zelensky disagreed with him, but he does, and so it explains him, and I think there's a tragic thing about it, but also at the same time, you know, happiness is a very difficult state to reach.
It's also fleeting, and successful sublimation, what's generally known, if you can, well, you can say that's his art. Many artists sublimate. I don't know. Sublimation is good.
In a way, it's more durable.
It's also sublimation. I agree, more durable, but also I think in some ways sublimation is a higher plane of existence. Yeah. Because again, I can't remember where it's from. I don't think it's even original. All this sexual stuff, it's real and powerful, but it's, you know, we're all mortal and whatever. And if you can sublimate it into creating something or doing something, it's usually, more, it's like sort of a higher plane of existence to some extent. And also if it brings you fame and money, good for you. I don't know.
No, it's pretty, I'm kind of impressed. I mean, I was sort of laughing at him before, but actually watching his interviews, I actually think that, you know, there's like, from immigrant
to immigrant kind of.
Well, just in general, I mean, like, what are podcasts? What are these things for? I mean, he does bring these guys on, these powerful men, and he kind of hangs out with them, and there is like a kind of a utility to that, because it gives you insight into into their thinking. It kind of they're not like on guard. They're just hanging with one of their bros, with one of their admirers, you know, admiring bros.
Totally,
And so there is, they say things that, I don't know, if you want to understand, you know, the people around you, there's the utility to it. So actually, there's truly, it's to some degree, it's a well-earned success that he has. Yeah.
What do you think? I'm going to interview you because I don't really even have an answer totally. What do you think of his? It's not a political project. It's open. He has a certain political stance, not unlike Elon Musk, who is his who he's fan of and stuff like that. Do you think, despite an obvious utility that this thing has, do you think there's some kind of like, it's not skewed, but in a way he's not an agent of light because of this?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you. It's a good point. It's
not neutral.
I'll comment kind of on the Zelensky interview, because I think there is something interesting that he doesn't do, at least in the parts that I've seen, and I think it can be sort of extended to, I think, more broadly kind of his interview style. Oh, and it's this. Well, he doesn't ask truly uncomfortable questions, or truly questions that, like, you know, try to get at some deeper truth, right? And with Zelensky, it's one thing I noticed, and it was kind of, because Zelensky did this over and over and over, which is he because it started with like him asking Zelensky to have a conversation in Russian, so that if they could have the conversation in Russian because they both speak Russian, it's their first language, and so they could have a much more comfortable conversation. It would be more real because then they could joke, they could understand the humor. He wouldn't have to wait for like a synchronous, interpreter in his ear to say what Zelensky said in Ukrainian and then translate into English or Russian so they could respond. And so Zelensky kind of said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to speak Russian because the Russians are attacking us. These are the bombs they're thinking. And then he would do this thing where Zelensky would compare Putin to Hitler and to all these horrible Nazis and stuff like that. And yet he would constantly group the Russians into one mass, as if like the Russian language did something wrong, as if all Russians did something wrong, and he basically can't speak Russian because he essentially hates Russians because all Russians, right? And so I found it to be strange because on the one hand, like it was an obvious thing where he's saying like, oh, these Nazis, Putin is basically saying all these Ukrainians are bad, all these Ukrainians are Nazis. But I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying all Russians are Nazis, all Russians are horrible, all Russians are evil. I won't even speak their language, actually my language because of that.
But he spoke it for a little bit.
For a little bit, but he would just only an introduction. And so, and instead of sort of like probing deeper into that, because there's a actually, he just doesn't probe deeper. And the obvious deeper question you ask on that is sort of sitting right there. It's like, well, how can you do the same thing to the Russian people that
dehumanize them?
Yeah, dehumanize them, make them into a horde, and he never does these kind of more difficult follow-up questions.
I feel like we already explained it because it's not that he doesn't probe; he just doesn't push against any of his guests, and that's part of And
that's part of why he's also successful because he has these guys on there, and so essentially it's like a hangout environment.
And I think the guys who come on there know that the guys who were there before were never challenged. I don't know. It's always.
And in fact, there's even I remember reading a Bloomberg article about him. It's basically known in like the tech CEO world that if you want to say something, like you want to go out and like you go on Lex Fridman's show.
Interesting.
Like it's like a thing. It's like because he never pushes back. He's a friendly. He's a friendly host. He'll let you basically get your points in without a challenge. And I think. Yeah, I think you're right. There's a political aspect to it, there's a business aspect to it, and there's a personality aspect to it. The political aspect is that a lot of the people that he interviews are essentially, conservatives, kind of on the on the right spectrum, and so he essentially agrees with them, and that's sort of the political side, and then the business side is that you don't want to. If you are going to be confrontational, no one's going to come on your show.
Exactly.
And you want these guys to come on your show
unless you have this personality and the brand of being confrontational, and that's a whole different story.
And at this point, when you're at like top level, you can maybe start to afford to do that because back in the day, when you're just sort of climbing, but then still you might not.
I don't know. That's his brand, and that's natural.
And then there's there's a personality aspect of it, which I think is maybe the strongest aspect of it, is that he truly just wants to be around successful, powerful men. And
I don't know if you mentioned that with Zelensky interview. I think average American wouldn't even probably know what's going on there. Is that so? Zelensky, for the majority of time of the interview, speaks and answers in Ukrainian.
Yes.
That is translated simultaneously.
Yeah.
Someone is doing simultaneous translation. Simultaneous translation to Lex, who speaks to Zelensky in Russian.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So that's actually pretty crazy, and only makes sense. Is that, well, I'm kind of got used to it whenever I kind of encounter since the war Ukrainians around here.
Yeah.
And it happened to me. And I also wouldn't even know they're Ukrainian. I thought maybe they're Russian. How I know? And they wouldn't speak Russian to me either, even if their English is really bad.
Yes.
That happened to me before. And so I kind of already used to it, but I still find it really dumbfounding.
Yes.
How to even say it, because if it's not I don't know, would it happen back in the day to German language? Would it? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's not even a precedent. Maybe it's not that surprising. But that's basically what Zelensky did, even though his English, he felt, wasn't good enough to converse with Lex directly in English. Yeah. So they needed all this translations going on simultaneously to make it happen. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting.
It was interesting. And I actually thought that was perhaps the most interesting part of the interview, the very beginning.
When they both speak in Russian.
Which is the reverse of they're both speaking in Russian, and they discuss this. Like, and I thought that was actually Lex Fridman did a pretty good job at it.
Lex's Russian, I think that was the part where you could hear it. It's not immediately translated into English. I don't know. Lex's one.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to him only in Russian, Lex, because you can also do you can select Lex, 4 different languages.
I have to say, for a guy who moved here when he was 11, his Russian is really good.
Yeah.
And again, only proves the whole thing if people, because most, like, what do people know? If your Russian is so good for you, an immigrant, it means your parents really valued it, and there's like a certain, you know how it is. You know better than I do.
It's like a cultured home, an intellectual home,
to an
where
extent,
idea, books, Russian literature, all these things are valued and are and pushed on the children so that they learn them, and that they respect them.
I think so. It seems that way. I don't know.
My world, the world that I grew up in. This was not the case. No one was forced to, read in Russian. The parents were either too busy to do it, but also they just didn't really care that much about that. It wasn't a priority for them. Yeah, so he comes from a world that is closer to yours. I mean, and it's closer to the world of Masha Gessen.
Oh, definitely.
And to Anya Harshian.
It's imagine.
Like, so it's
even though I don't know what Anya's Russian is like, honestly, because Jersey and
maybe you're
her
right.
dad died. I don't know details, honestly.
But to the Masha Gessen world,
sure,
where like the parents are very, and also the dad is also a computer programmer. So it's actually.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you immediately understand what his dad? What did he do when you hear that he worked for Plasma Institute?
Well,
he's like basically
it's physicist.
It's physicist. Yeah, it's physicist.
It's pretty high level,
plasma.
high level stuff. Yeah, like. I mean, I don't know. It's like what's exactly
his research focuses on plasma approaches to material treatment, fuel conversion, hydrogen production, biology, medicine, and environmental control.
Yeah, it's basically
plasma research.
It's high level physics. Like
and he did it already in Russia.
Yeah,
like that's just continuation of his research. So they had, I imagine, a direct flight, Pan Am, Moscow, whatever, Chicago, I think.
Yeah.
So it's different. I get it. And okay, just a little bit back. I wonder if anyone downloaded it or saved that interview because it was taken off Lex's YouTube channel, but it is kind of interesting. I wish I had access to it because you could tell. So his dad came on wearing a bow tie. It's a very, I don't know, there's a I think an audio version of it left somewhere on the internet. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, wearing bow tie, having this huge hair, kind of Einstein-like. Clearly intentional, sort of like have had this actually pretty domineering, kind of pretty charismatic presence, unlike Lex, his son.
Yes.
So he didn't inherit that. I don't know. You immediately start wondering what's up, because usually family kind of share certain traits.
Or he would beat him into,
No, and when they talked, he almost treated his dad not unlike his other guest. There was very little differentiation, which was surprising.
Yeah.
He kind of let him talk at him, and of course he probably, because it wasn't English, but it was clearly, I guess they have familial connection, but it wasn't even obvious in kind of like body language. I don't know, it's a video, it's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing because I remember like his dad was like had a big focus on like how dumb like American education system is here.
Right, the math is bad.
How great it was in the Soviet Union. And in fact, he had good things to say about the Soviet Union from that perspective.
Oh, maybe that's why he took that down. Who knows why?
Maybe, I don't know why, but So, but it's interesting.
So you could tell his dad was not the kind of like assimilationist type.
No.
Meaning, I'm pretty sure he felt that way. Like, sure, he got a good job here, and it's interesting, and he continued his research that I think would be very hard to keep doing in the 90s and collapsed Soviet Union.
I'm sure that's why he left.
So everything made sense. Yeah, they left, I think, early 90s. So it made sense for his career, but I don't think he's this kind of like American fanboy. He's
not exactly,
critical.
Not 100%.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
He would be definitely a lib and anti-Soviet, obviously, but he would have this kind of like what do you call it? He would feel somewhat superior to American culture at large, I imagine. And that's like a very specific vibe that very few of the Soviet immigrants can just have.
Yeah.
Just because that kind of superiority thing comes with a certain, and the kind of gravitas, he kind of had that gravitas, comes with a certain stature and what you do and why you do it and where you come from. Not just, so so Lex really comes from a very particular, very thin layer. I don't know, not layer, like circle milieu of the possible Russian immigrants in general.
Yeah. And so, it's a very thin layer of the Soviet Union. It's a. I mean,
inside Soviet Union, it's tiny.
It's like it's essentially it's the elite of this. It's like the cultural elite.
Like Sergey Brin, for instance.
Yes.
Not unlike, it's kind of interesting that,
they're all the same,
I don't want to say it, but these are the successful guys. So, dad of Sergey Brin, because my cousin kind of met him and knows him, dad of Sergey Brin taught at the mathematical faculty of Moscow State University, was himself... No? Yes.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just thinking, did he also go to Drexel? He might actually also be in Drexel because he was also came over to one of the universities directly. But it doesn't matter. He's very similar. I mean, it actually is interesting. So even, like the oligarch sort of tech guys,
American oligarch,
have dads from that, and the oligarch podcasters are also from there, from that world. You know?
Oh my God! Wait. Yeah, I don't.
Because all the successful podcasters who are Soviet affiliated have basically the same kind of dad.
Yeah, Anna Hachian, Lex, then Sergey Brin, not a podcaster but a tech guy.
And it explains that your dad never really went to the full top.
Did you hear what I'm saying? He dropped out. What a loser!
So where's our podcast?
Oh, wait, our podcast?
Because your dad dropped out, you see?
wait, I don't want to call my dad a loser.
No, he wasn't a loser, but your dad dropped out of that world.
Yeah.
And so,
that's why I don't know how to do successful podcasting.
Yeah. Wow.
You think?
I don't know, but maybe. Damn it. You need to have...
think?
I don't know. I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
We'll never succeed.
But look, and Masha Gessen is like the top sort of court Russian. Her dad is like that.
Yeah, and she went to the top, besides my 57, School 57 in Moscow is like very good mathematical school. So it's all connected.
So it actually gives you an insight into how elite that class was. Essentially, that class is like transportable to like, the people who are the top cultural elite in New York, in Manhattan, right? Like it's a one-to-one direction.
Well, let me tell you this, speculate. Sergey Brin is the richest out of them all. You can't beat him. He's uber oligarch,
of course.
Billionaire. And let me tell you, I'm pretty sure, for instance, Lex Fridman's mom is not a mathematician. There's this vibe about his dad. Maybe she is, but I kind of don't think so. But Sergey Brin's parents, both math people, both Mehmet Moscow faculty, math faculty of Moscow State University.
School.
So both. Mom, I think, is pretty big too. Work for
No, I know they're both engineers. Yeah.
So, and their son is really top success. But anyway, but also, doesn't it make you think? I mean, I'm a bit ironic because like history happened, it's over. That it's interesting. There is the somewhat like Soviet know-how, like mathematics and all that stuff. Well, you can say it was heavily Jewish because these are the Jews who left somehow. They're all Jewish too. They're not just Russian, they're Russian Jews. But, and that somehow kind of like everyone who capitalized on it, they're pretty much in America, and sort of like they also helped a military-industrial complex of America. Not only they became rich themselves, they also sort of like served the American power. So, which only proves that the view of like Soviet Union lost, not just collapsed, lost, America won, is truly like it's true. I don't know, because some people would probably interpret that early 90s history differently. I don't know.
No, it's a good point, actually. Yeah, I mean, they are all absorbed into this empire.
Exactly.
And they serve the empire.
They serve the empire. And they like to serve the empire. They believe in the empire.
And it's another one of these reasons why, they're so successful is they serve the empire. Like, like for instance, in terms of serving the empire, I mean, this is one thing about Lex Fridman that I actually find, I have to say, I find it disgusting as someone who is like, I don't know, has some dignity, sucking up to, people in power. I mean, I don't know. I can't stomach it myself, and I don't respect it in others. And he does this stuff all the time in like little ways and big ways. Like in the first 30 seconds of the interview with Zelensky, he said it with a straight face. You know this to Zelensky. You know this. Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they care about corruption. So, and there's a question of like, how can, Ukraine deal with its own corruption? So he just does this stuff where like, he just sucks up to like, Elon Musk and Donald Trump care about corruption. I mean, are you fucking joking me? But he does this stuff all the time. And I don't know, when he says things like this, I really can't, I don't know. I can't really have any respect for the guy, even knowing that, he's channeled his repression very well, and he does, and the podcast does provide some utility in terms of just giving you access to powerful men and how they think.
Probably more utility than our podcast.
Know what I'm saying? I actually don't know, because I think
I'm just trying to be generous.
I mean, our utility, you know how it is. Look, light, right? Shards of light come through
trash.
through trash, but also
that's wisdom of Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, but not just through trash, but they're like, because the world is a dark place, and so light isn't allowed to shine through. And so I think what we do well is we actually do give, like, we try to give the light to shine, and I don't think he does. I think he lets powerful people say what they want to say.
I agree. That's why I said, even when I kind of started somewhat being sympathetic to him, I say I doubt he's an agent of light. So I kind of don't see it that way. But then that's the truth. Like, I mean, most people very close or around, already in possession of a lot of money, rarely are.
I know.
And that's not me being, it's not stupid communist thing. No, it just I think is the kind of, on average, the nature of life.
Yeah.
If you kind of, the sort of like this kind of rise and acquisition and sort of being with power and just in power and having power, it sort of does that. And I imagine some very rare people can preserve, if they ever had like the sparkle or the light, for sure they can. Like, let's say, I keep talking about it, but I do believe it, like David Lynch. I think he's pure till the fucking end. Yeah. And there are people like that. I think maybe artists more often, because it's sort of a bit more of a pure thing.
He's a fucking podcaster.
He's kind of like a political interviewer.
He provides a service, and service to powerful men to come and kind of say their mind.
But it's also very direct if you think about it, because I do separate. I think we should. It's a whole different kind of subject of conversation about fiction, nonfiction. He kind of works in a nonfiction genre. Yeah. And nonfiction genre, as you know, you've been in it for a long time. Journalism is nonfiction genre, documentary. That's all you've been doing. It kind of sort of like thrives. It's sort of all about morality, or how you sell morality. That's how I see it. And sort of, if you really think about it, while fiction is not necessarily. That's why I think you can be very successful there and still pure. But with nonfiction, and so if you sell your morality, first of all, if you sell it really successfully, already big fucking questions to you. What is going on? Yeah. And I think that is that's a bit like that. Yeah. Don't you think? I don't know if I'm articulate enough about this, because I sense it.
I think you said it very well.
And I can explain your sort of like trajectory in this regard too. You were never selling morality. You didn't sell morality. Your morality. You didn't do it actually. Yeah. And sort of you were moral or felt moral, but you were not selling it. And so, but the whole, the way I see nonfiction, truly like nonfiction genre is like you sell it.
Yeah. And then there's like, and then there's like edge cases where for whatever reason.
But you need to do like upselling kind of, right?
But there's edge cases, but for the most part, you're selling something to people.
Not something, very specific thing. It's not imagination. It's not matter. I don't know. It's just it's like very direct thing, right? And so and there is if we're going to critique nonfiction.
Him and his approach. I think it is. There is a kind of a. Again, it's like he sells this idea that it's the world is controlled by these great men, and if we can only get the great men who only want the best.
Well, start a conversation.
Who truly actually want the best for them, for their people or something, or for their countries. I mean, then and it's just a matter of them not understanding each other or not like And so, but it's like no, it's like it's a very specific way of looking at the world. But it sort of hides underneath it, economic
power. Just power. You never talk about power.
Yeah, it's just about these well-meaning, powerful people. Yes.
Because you always talk to powerful people, and you never talk about power. Shouldn't it be? Wait, wow. Lex Fridman. It's like this. The motto. Lex Fridman logline. I talk to powerful people, never about power, and that's why it's comfortable. Yeah. For them, for everyone. But before we leave. Let me tell you, okay, that I didn't know. Sergey Brin is still the most, as I said, rich and most, is the richest and the most successful out of them all, the immigrants. And I did mention, I think, yes, I was correct. His mom did work for NASA. But what about this? His grandfather, he's not even second generation, this stuff, third generation. His grandfather was already kind of like PhD in physics and mathematics, and he worked also not at the Moscow State University, but in another one, also famous one. He worked in the university, like worked as a professor there. So third generation.
Interesting.
No, but that's interesting. It's actually even
it's
deeper.
It's the family business.
Yeah, it's like, I guess there are these old Moscow Jews, because it's sort of like very specific. My family's old Moscow Jews, but his too, because if his grandfather born in 1919, by the way, I don't know where, maybe he moved to Moscow, but it was hard for Jews to live in Moscow so early on. There was Pale of Settlement still.
And then go into engineering right away. Yeah.
There's a whole thing. Like, I think it's actually not as simple as it seems. Yeah, it's deeper. And then again, like, Americans don't have to know anything about it. But okay, one last comment, and I think it's only I can make it. I do have some sympathy, as I already expressed, for Lex regarding the sublimation thing, the kind of like the powerful man thing. And I have this thing, I think I definitely got over it. But for instance, remember I fell into it was over a decade ago. I did a bunch of interviews for this kind of, I found it kind of interesting, Russian magazine called, ridiculous name, Prime Russian magazine, sponsored by some like shady Russian minigarch, and it was a Russian magazine, but they kind of covered like wide range of subjects, intellectual and stuff like that. And I usually conducted the interviews in English, but would like translate them in Russian for them, and it was print. And I got to talk to some powerful men. But not powerful in this term money, but like usually it would be like more intellectual, like professors, like I don't know if you can call him powerful. I loved him, like Mike Davis, Terry Eagleton, usually lefty too, because that's the guys, the editors who ran it. They were, I guess, left leaning. I don't know.
But like respectable men.
Jared Diamond. Okay, that's not left. Jared Diamond.
But it's like men of stature, of
definitely
social
men
stature,
of stature,
who an accomplishment,
who know things,
and who know things. Yes,
who know things,
who are wise.
Who are wise, knowledgeable, quite old usually, all that stuff.
So
I can't remember all the names. I actually have many names. There were some of them.
There was actually great interviews, I thought. You're actually very good at it.
No, there were many names, but let me tell. And I felt like I think it was interesting to me. And it was a bit similar. First of all, yes, I do have the just general curiosity in what's going on. I'm like just curious. Pretty much any intellectual subject, I can kind of get into it. And as an interviewer, you don't need to be that well versed in the subject. You can prepare for a week and you can do it. But the other sense, I actually relate a little bit to Lex, even though I'm not gay, because I kind of sort of like mostly fatherless. I had this thing, I thought like without kind of subconsciously, I couldn't even verbalize it, and I was attracted to you, even though you're not much older, and then and not a big stature, but you knew more than I did, you know what I mean, about the world and everything. And then they're like much older men, and I kind of like, it's not even sexual. I don't know. For him, it's clearly there's something there, but for me, not really. Like sometimes it's really just kind of like
is it pleasant?
Dad,
is it pleasant? Like what's
like
the feeling?
A dad or a grandpa, even like grandpa better because it's less
what's
weird
the feeling?
sexually.
It's like
it's like someone telling you different wise things about life, how to live, what to think, kind of like what can happen. I don't know. It's sort of, but I guess more in a more intellectual.
Yeah, I got you. But there's like a comforting.
There's something comforting about it, and I don't think you have such a different psyche. You actually fight against everything sometimes. Like validly, sometimes not. But I remember like I was just kind of like happy to hang out. Like,
that's interesting.
But I was younger too.
Well, I get you. So you understand what he's coming from.
I get him. Like it was a really long-winded way of saying.
So there is a sublimation of fatherlessness, but also of a lack of a relationship.
Just
that you had.
Lack of relationship. So it's not even.
But he has a lack of relationship too.
But he had a father.
But he has a lack of a relationship in a different way.
In a different way.
Let me ask you this, because we can end on this, because I do think, because I'm a guy, and it's like, okay, I have my guy, views on him. But as a woman, right? When you see Lex Fridman, like what do you feel? Do you feel attraction? Do you feel I don't know. What are the feelings of just like the raw You know, as far as the raw sexual energy, we can call it that goes.
Okay, there's none. It feels like he's like a super well-groomed kind of mix of some kind of American Patrick Bateman, American Psycho, just visually, because he presents himself that way, or he wants to come off that way. But Patrick Bateman had actually virility and kind of like some insane sexuality, seemingly from the book.
Yeah.
So American Psycho / Fight Club thing, kind of like a depressed middle manager who lives in a super clean condo, and he does, if you look at his Austin place, house or apartment, I guess, and it's a mix of that, and heterosexuality, like if I look at just as like from my perspective, no, there's zero. He's like some kind of like sterile kidden. Like it's a sterility.
Is it like has he washed it away from, like is he like, because you know, like look, we're like humans being basically all animals are sexual beings, right? There's like, I mean, you don't have to look, you can just look at some squirrels, you know, like fucking in the yard, and they're like this male squirrel with his fucking balls, you know, like trying to like hump all, like, so there's like sexual, I'm sure that if you're a squirrel you can sort of recognize the various sexual energies of the different squirrels.
You think?
Probably.
Okay.
Because it's
we had like a really big bald squirrel come to us to like get nuts.
Yeah. And so, is he, because of his like repression? Has he like washed? Because if we are right,
if he hides it,
if we are right, and he is basically like, you know, he's like super deep in the closet, you know, and in the closet even to himself, maybe. Is it one of the ways of dealing with it is just to sort of like to scrub any sexuality from you, like, 'cause it's like,
I don't want to speculate, maybe, I don't know what he does. He seems so well groomed, so like rigid in his routine, whether it's like working out, grooming, eating, biohacking his like whatever
it's
moods, like up or down, like it's very bizarre. But at the same time, he's also in this jiu-jitsu. I think is he black belt?
He might be,
or
he's
something
advanced,
like that. So he's clearly, I can't fully understand. So he's pretty what do you call it? I guess he's in his body because he's not weak, so he's fit, and he can use it, but it's kind of functional, because sexuality is not necessarily functional. You can be like a sexy fat person, or a sexless perfect body person. That can happen.
Actually, a lot of those types.
So he's the kind of the sexless good body person, I guess. I don't know. Fit body.
No, but it's like a sexless guy who is super obsessed with his health.
Yeah, so like, health focus.
But he's a health freak, right? So like he is, because he's like with Huberman.
Definitely.
I mean, when you talk to him, you know, in a day in the life stuff, when he's talking about him doing like any kind of exercise routine, it's usually like a routine that he got from some guy some great man that he interviewed. You know, who's like a great man into the field of, you know, I don't know, fitness. And so he's always following routines, and so he is super obsessed with his body health, but yet sexless.
I don't know what's it about, but because we started the podcast with mentioning that he took Huberman, and there's a video on YouTube. So how he takes, that's a collab episode, he takes Huberman to jiu-jitsu to try jiu-jitsu class, and he shows him some moves, and when he shows them, you know, jiu-jitsu is kind of like, actually, I guess it's, you like hugging each other.
Because first of all, you do jiu-jitsu. Like you.
Well, I did. I kind of like, I'm kind of injured.
You paused, but you've been doing it for the last year.
For over a year. And so it's really, and it's like, I'm actually understood it's good for me because I was very uncomfortable around people and like touching them and trying to hurt them, actually, to some extent. It's psychologically, it was very weird for me, so I'm not good, but I think I got a bit better. But ultimately, for those who don't really know how jiu-jitsu feels or looks like, it is a lot of hugging and kind of like, I don't know, a lot of hugging, actually.
Hugging other guys.
Hugging other guys or girls, like there are a lot of women.
But it's mostly men with men.
Men with men and women with women trying to be. And so when he did it with Huberman, who knew nothing, and so he had to show him around, there was an interesting vibe that he sort of like really likes the vicinity of his body. And he kind of had, if I remember correctly, again, it's not a diss or anything.
No,
he kind of sort of had this like little, almost like cute little smirk or little smile. And he seemed very happy being in that space with Huberman. And he sort of like, I don't know, there was some almost joy there. This kind of was interesting. And it was specifically noticeable because usually there's no joy noticeable in his face. That's all. So I don't know. Please don't sue us.
Oh no, please sue us. I mean, I don't know. It'd be a weird thing. that you have to prove that you're not gay in court or something.
You know what I think?
Yeah.
There is no way for a man, unfortunately, it's really sad, to prove you're not gay.
Yeah.
There is no way.
Yeah,
You know?
and once the accusation has been made, it has a kind of a momentum of its own. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of I have to say, I want to end on this maybe, just on a more kind of anthropological note and a personal note as well. Is that it is sad, because I know that it is sad that Soviet society was so repressed, and has this sort of and it continues to be so, actually, right? And it has this sort of a legacy, I guess you can say, right? That keeps on going. Although,
I think less now.
Less now, but
Soviet
I mean, it's in a way it's gotten worse because in Russia there's all these basically anti-gay laws and all this stuff that they put in, right?
Yeah, but I think the sort of like post-Soviet generation is definitely better, even if they are harassed and repressed by the
it's
law.
Better, yeah.
Like internally, I think it's better.
At least they know who they are.
Yeah, that side, because I think being closeted to yourself is the worst.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I do think that that's a huge thing of what happened, what's going on in the community that I grew up in the Soviet immigrant community in San Francisco, is that there was just so much repression. And I don't know, I guess, I don't know, maybe people do channel it, people do sublimate it, and so people have to live somehow, right? So it's not the worst thing that could happen to you, I guess, but Lex Fridman is probably, the most successful sublimator of them all. So
yeah. So on some level, I wish him all the best. I wish him getting kind of in touch with himself, with his true feelings, and kind of get rid of this no dick rule.
Well, I actually don't know.
No?
I'll tell you this. I would say this, Lex, I think a dick is dangerous. Because if you get the dick, the whole thing might collapse. Because you might not be interested in talking to these guys. You just might be in love,
Yeah, but you will have to. It's your job.
Well, but he might just not care anymore. He's just, I want to hang out with my love of my life.
Well, check this out. This whole thing about, remember why Lex Fridman is single? In the first comment to a pretty successful video about that is like, but maybe if Lex had a girlfriend, would he even have a podcast? Like that's the line of discussion or ideas that's very popular.
Exactly. I think it might collapse. So you know what? I just think it's like this. You figured out a way. You figured out a way. It's like if you by design or by accident, like you figured it out, and it all rests on maybe denying something very crucial about yourself. Well, if there's worse things happen to people. It's not the worst thing, right?
Yeah, it's not.
But maybe you don't need the podcast. Maybe you just need a guy to love,
Love is all you need.
Maybe if you have to choose, actually, between a career and love. I hope that one day you'll be able to make that choice for yourself in honesty and with openness.
No, maybe you don't need to make a choice. Maybe you can have a podcast and love.
So it's true.
Hello.
I mean, that's nice too.
Maybe
it's not as dramatic, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe he won't have to make a choice, one thing that worries me, all the successful people in America of the Soviet extraction, they come from a very particular kind of group.
Yes.
And again, Americans don't understand it.
The engineers.
Not necessarily, I guess, since it's partially humanities too, but of a certain group.
Yeah.
So does it mean if on average you look at the statistics of just who can make it and who can't, that's a prerequisite? Is it?
I mean, I don't know.
Outside of sublimation and suppression, is it? I mean,
it's probably more likely because you're in a certain social class that is already sort of successful in America, so you can speak their language. You have experience behind you of your parents dealing with these kinds of institutions, right? Like if you're an academic or something like that, you know how to deal with these institutions. You're comfortable in those institutions. Your parents work in those institutions, so it's like. It's as if it's just natural, I think, so it does make sense because, and this is my argument, and I think what you really need to end is that America and the Soviet Union are actually a lot closer than people believe, because you can have a kind of the elite of one country move to America, or the elite of the Soviet Union move to America and essentially immediately join the elite of the country with almost zero acculturation. Like there isn't.
What is acculturation?
You don't need to like a culture. Like it's hard to fit in. It's like you just fit in. And it's always surprised me about my parents on some level because how quickly they were able to integrate.
Definitely, yeah.
But on their level, it's even my parents don't come from that class. They don't come from that kind of class that all the successful Soviet immigrants come from. But even they were able to fit in very well, but they were never tied to institutions. And these guys, because the institutions are essentially the same, they look the same, they function the same, they're bureaucracies. So one is a state bureaucracy,
right.
One is more of a state privatized bureaucracy, but they function, their values are the same, the way that you navigate them is the same. And so that's it. But I think, that's almost a topic for another podcast. Yeah.
Okay. Hope that was useful. And we, like Lex, offered you something.
Lex, if you want to, look, we also believe in dialogue. If you want to come on our podcast.
And start a conversation.
We're all into it,
Also, we have some friends we can introduce you to.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, quite a few.
Mm-hmm. Or you can always marry Anna Hachian. And actually continue with this ruse.
Can you imagine the synergy of the two businesses?
Insane.
They'll start their own network.
It's such a power couple. I can't believe I feel bad saying it because if it happens, it's like, whoa.
They should give you a percentage for life.
Something. I don't know. It's like a great business idea, right?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Have a good day. And
stay strong.
Stay strong. But do what you love. Or love who you are.
Love what you do.
Love what you do.
Okay.
Or repress it and become successful.